The team of 10 American soldiers lay silently on the ground, trying to blend into their surroundings. Their camouflage uniforms helped them hide perfectly among the bushes, making them nearly invisible to the Japanese soldiers passing by on the nearby road. The heat was intense, and the dense forest did little to facilitate air circulation, creating a stifling and suffocating atmosphere. Always cautious, the soldiers slowly rose after the Japanese patrol passed. They moved towards the interior of the island, following the main rule of their mission: avoid contact with the enemy and only fire if absolutely necessary. They were not ordinary commandos. They were the Alamo Scouts, the eyes and ears of General Walter Kruger's 6th Army. This special unit was created to gather intelligence on the Pacific Islands before any Allied invasion. These men were trained to blend in with the jungle, using nature to their advantage. Throughout the war, in over 100 missions, not a single Alamo Scout lost his life while facing the powerful Japanese enemies behind enemy lines. In early 1943, Lieutenant General Walter Kruger took command of the United States 6th Army. This newly formed army, nicknamed the Alamo Force, would operate exclusively in the Pacific. Determined to provide the best intelligence for his operations, Kruger decided to create a special reconnaissance unit tasked with gathering as much information as possible about the Japanese. General Kruger wanted to avoid disasters like the one that occurred on the island of Kiska in the Aleutians. The Navy and Army Air Forces bombed the island for over 20 days without knowing that the Japanese had already evacuated the area. Additionally, the landing forces ended up engaging each other in the confusion, resulting in self-inflicted casualties. With these memories still fresh, Kruger formed the Alamo Scouts, selecting dedicated volunteers ready to conduct reconnaissance operations behind enemy lines. On November 28, 1943, Kruger ordered the establishment of the Alamo Scouts Training Center near the Alamo Force headquarters on Goodenough Island, located at the southeastern tip of New Guinea. The Alamo Scouts were ready to fulfill their mission, aware that any mistake could be fatal. They advanced cautiously, each step meticulously planned, aiming to obtain crucial information for future operations. The orders were clear and direct. The training center will be responsible for preparing selected volunteers for reconnaissance and attack missions. The course will last 6 weeks. The top graduates will be formed into special teams at the disposal of the general commanding the Alamo Force and will be called Alamo Scouts. Those not selected will be returned to their original commands to be used in similar roles by their commanders. General Kruger chose Lieutenant Colonel Frederick Bradshaw as the director of the Alamo Scouts Training Center, ASTC. The instructors, handpicked for their expertise, came from the Amphibious Scouts, a reconnaissance unit of the U.S. Navy composed of personnel from the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, and Australian Armed Forces. This unit, created in July 1943, had the same objectives as the Alamo Scouts. The first group of volunteers began their training at the ASTC on January 1, 1944. Many of the volunteers came from the 158th Bushmasters Regiment and the 32nd Infantry Division. They were all experienced soldiers trained for jungle warfare. During the 6 weeks of training, the men received instruction in weaponry, physical conditioning, navigation, communications, intelligence gathering, rubberboat handling, reconnaissance, and patrolling. Despite their proficiency with weapons, the Alamo Scouts were not typical commandos or rangers. As author Ruth Quinn highlights, they were trained to avoid combat unless it was necessary to complete their intelligence-gathering missions. Those who displayed an excessive desire to eliminate Japanese soldiers were removed from the selection process. Education, weapon proficiency, and athletic build were not the main factors for success for the trainees. Priority was given to volunteers willing to endure arduous marches and think logically in stressful situations. Most importantly, recruits needed to be willing to sacrifice their lives beyond the call of duty. The Scouts knew that if they were captured, there was no hope of rescue. Out of more than 500 recruits, only 140 were selected as Alamo Scouts. After graduation, the men were divided into 10 teams of 5 to 10 soldiers and assigned to missions ranging from long-range reconnaissance to prisoner and hostage rescue operations. Lieutenant John R.C. McGowan and 5 men conducted the first reconnaissance operation of the Alamo Scouts on February 27, 1944. They were dispatched to Los Negros Island and reached the shore in a rubber boat, ready to face the unknown. Previous intelligence reports indicated no activity on the island, but the Alamo Scouts discovered a well-fed Japanese garrison hidden inland. They came dangerously close to a Japanese work party of over 15 men and managed to blend into the bushes to avoid detection. The Scouts then withdrew into the jungle, awaiting the arrival of the PBY Catalina. 2 days later, the 1st Cavalry Division landed on the island, successfully neutralizing the Japanese forces thanks to the precise information provided by the Alamo Scouts. The success of this operation set a standard for future missions. The Scouts would be deployed on PT boats, Catalinas, or submarines ahead of Allied divisions' landings, gathering as much information as possible to prepare for the invasions. After the operation in Los Negros, more Alamo Scouts were sent to Wewak and Madong on the coast of New Guinea to collect critical intelligence on the enemy and rescue over 70 Allied Dutch prisoners. During these operations, no Alamo Scout was detected by the Japanese. Dr. Michael E. Krivdo, from the Office of the Army Special Operations Command historian, writes that Lieutenant General Kruger decided to send the Alamo Scouts to Luzon Island ahead of the major landings to avoid unnecessary beachhead casualties. Kruger's eyes and ears arrived on the island in the final days of 1944 to gather information on the Japanese defenders, their fortifications, and armaments. According to Dr. Krivdo, the Alamo Scouts were primarily used as liaisons with local Filipino guerrilla groups for this operation. Team Littlefield was the first squad to land, leading a reconnaissance mission of over 90 kilometers to join Colonel Marcos V. Marking Augustin's guerrillas near the town of Tarlac. Team Nellist Scouts were tasked with locating and destroying several hidden artillery pieces the Japanese planned to use against the landing forces. Equipped with camouflaged uniforms and essential supplies to operate behind enemy lines, the men infiltrated the jungle to locate their targets. After covering the target area, the Alamo Scouts identified the enemy positions and destroyed them with mass artillery fire, clearing the way for the invasion force. Team Nellist then joined forces with Team Rounceville and the 6th Ranger Battalion soldiers to attack the Japanese camp at Cabanatuan. Located over 20 miles behind enemy lines, the camp held more than 500 Allied soldiers captive alongside friendly guerrilla forces. Fighting the Japanese on their own territory would be a formidable challenge, but the Scouts were trained for this and were eager to once again test their skills and save their compatriots. The Rounceville and Nellist teams approached Cabanatuan under the cover of night. The mission was clear: gather intelligence on Japanese movements around the camp. The enemy presence in the area was massive, making a direct approach impossible due to the open terrain. Lieutenant Bill Nellist decided to observe the enemy from a strategic point, a solitary shack near the complex. Disguised as a local Filipino, he gained access to the hut, where he monitored Japanese activities. His mission was to provide the Rangers with the safest routes to surprise the enemy garrison and liberate the camp's prisoners. Ranger Commander Henry Mucci ordered the attack on the night of January 30th. A P-61 Black Widow night fighter flew over the complex, distracting the Japanese and signaling the start of the operation. Supported by the Alamo Scouts and over 200 Filipino guerrillas, the 100 Rangers stormed the complex from all sides, catching the defenders by surprise. In an intense 30-minute battle, the attackers annihilated over 500 Japanese soldiers. The precise shooting and carefully planned strategy ensured the operation's success. The Alamo Scouts and Rangers rescued 511 Allied prisoners and captured over 80 Japanese soldiers. With the war nearing its end, the Alamo Scouts still had many missions to complete. By the summer of 1945, they had conducted over 100 operations behind enemy lines without being detected by the Japanese even once. Fewer than 10 Alamo Scouts were injured in combat, and none lost their lives. As the American High Command prepared for the invasion of mainland Japan, the Alamo Scouts were considered the spearhead of the offensive. They were to land on Kyushu Island, where over 600,000 Japanese soldiers were stationed, and gather crucial information on enemy troop distribution. Fortunately, the war ended before this invasion became necessary. President Truman decided to drop the atomic bombs, ending the conflict. After the war, the Alamo Scouts served as security for key officers during the occupation of Japan. Finally, in November 1945, the unit was disbanded in Kyoto. Some members of the Alamo Scouts later joined the Army Special Forces. In 1988, the Alamo Scouts were officially recognized, receiving the Army Special Forces tab and being added to the lineage of current U.S. Special Operators. The Alamo Scouts demonstrated invaluable worth, proving how Special Operations Forces can provide unique and vital skills to conventional forces in critical theaters of operation. Their legacy of courage, stealth, and effectiveness continues to inspire and shape military operations to this day. After the formal dissolution of the Alamo Scouts, many of its members continued to influence and shape modern military operations. Their courage and ability to operate discreetly behind enemy lines set a standard for future Special Operations Forces. The teachings and tactics of the Alamo Scouts were incorporated into the strategies of the U.S. Army Special Forces, ensuring their legacy of excellence lived on. The Alamo Scouts not only accomplished their missions with precision and bravery, but also established the importance of intelligence and preparation in military operations. Their successes in reconnaissance and rescue missions showcase the effectiveness of small, highly trained teams, forever changing the approach to special operations. They demonstrated that with the right strategy and proper training, great feats could be achieved with limited resources. The missions of the Alamo Scouts highlighted the vital importance of gathering accurate information. On numerous occasions, their actions prevented larger tragedies and ensured the success of Allied operations. From infiltrating enemy territories to preparing for major offensives, the Alamo Scouts played a crucial role in ensuring commanders had the necessary information to make strategic decisions. The Alamo Scouts were volunteers willing to risk everything for the success of their missions. Each member was aware of the dangers they would face, yet they showed unwavering commitment to their duty. They did not seek personal glory, but rather the success of their operations and the safety of their comrades. This spirit of sacrifice and honor is something that should be remembered and celebrated. Today, the legacy of the Alamo Scouts continues to inspire new generations of soldiers and special operations experts. Their stories of courage, innovation, and sacrifice are studied and admired, reminding everyone of the importance of determination and skill in times of war. If you enjoyed this compelling story about the Alamo Scouts and want to keep following impactful accounts of war heroes and special operations, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. Enable notifications so you won't miss any new exciting stories about wars and the brave who fought in them. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.